Okay, so we are recording. I am joined with KryptoKoolaid, and we are going to talk about game theory, and we're just going to have a very organic conversation about the Hex ecosystem, Pulse, Richard, all these projects, and a lot of game theory pieces. And so if you could, I don't think people realize just how fucking good you are and your background. So 2 second reel about what you do and your experience.
Sure. A little quick sizzle.
Yeah.
I'm a level architect, visual storyteller, and game theory person in the film and entertainment industry. Essentially, I tell stories. So I'm a visual storyteller, but I actually am the student of the art of play. And play, from puppies to primates, is the ability to take strategy and learning and then pair that with growth and movement. So that's how chess is played. That is how video games are played. It's a social consensus of mapping reality and guessing what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so let's kick this off. We were just talking on stream, and I had to stop him because I was like, well, we're not on stream, but I'm recording here because there's just too much good stuff. So let's start at the very first thing that I presented, and let's just let the conversation go from there. What I presented was, it's very interesting. I don't know if this is just good luck, or if he really, if Richard really times his stuff this perfectly, or if it's literally just he's so in tune with his intuition that these things are magically kind of happening. But you have to admit that the timing and the launch of Hex was pretty fucking special. And now I feel like we're on the precipice of the same thing again with Pulse. Here's what I mean is there's really no room left for the Fed with the US dollar. So they will have to raise rates. We went from everyone thinking that inflation was going to curtail and completely start to fall off this holiday season. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, they were predicting 2.2% inflation in the beginning of the year, and we're at 7% inflation right now. So the Fed went from, we're not gonna raise rates until 2024 to now we're gonna have 6 rate hikes by 2023. So just do the math on that. And so here's why it matters, because if you don't know macroeconomics, it's okay. Why it matters is because a rate hike is going to completely stop and just dead in its tracks any legacy market pump. And since Bitcoin now follows that, is you can expect a rate hike, especially this first one, because we haven't had a rate hike in so long. It is going to create blood in the markets for probably at least a week. You can expect recovery to take at least a week if it's just going to be this small thing, or if it's going to be a sustained a sustained bear market, whatever, who cares? But I'm just saying that the initial Band-Aid being ripped off from cheap interest, cheap money is going to be huge. And here's why, is because just a 25-point base jump is going to now take that cheap money and debt that's been out there, and it's going to make it 30% of GDP instantaneously. So now that is going to have an effect in markets. And we know now that Bitcoin is actually following legacy markets. So it's not a risk-off asset anymore like gold and silver is. So that's going to create turmoil. So if that's the play that's going to happen in Q1 of 2022, well, Pulse is also launching at that same time. And more importantly, people are going to get a duplicate of their wallet. So now picture the scenario here is crypto's bleeding out. Everything's going to follow Bitcoin. Everything's just taking a shit. Well, what's the one thing that doesn't tend to follow Bitcoin? Hex. And now, at the same time, you're literally getting your entire wallet duplicated. So everything you haven't panic sold yet, you're gonna have a one-to-one copy of that in your wallet. So that's happening. We have the natural price appreciation that occurs in Hex when the rest of the crypto market tends to go down. But what if this is the perfect storm for now people taking a look and seeing you look at those spec charts and it's like the floor is lava. And the only one that's green, or one of the only ones that are green, are stable coins and US dollar tether and then Hex. So is this going to be the catalyst and the pivot for people to say, wait a second, Bitcoin was supposed to be the risk off asset. That was supposed to be the hedge, the protection against inflation, against rate hikes, against all this shit. And it's not. But what's this thing over here? What's this Hex over here that's now acting positively in this negative news market, a negative fundamental market? This thing is positive. Is this now going to be the catalyst for people to say, store value my ass on Bitcoin and start to look at Hex? I don't know, could be. So I'm going to let you riff on that.
Sure. Well, let's take it back just a few points, because perfect storms are just that. You have black swan events, which take things in a downward direction, and then white swan events, which take things in a forward momentum. We were just kind of riffing a little bit before that I don't think Hex would have taken off if it wasn't for COVID. We all wouldn't be inside. We all wouldn't be watching streams. We wouldn't have the time to watch these streams. And the real difference is that in the beginning, we just had ourselves, and we weren't that many. It was a very, very, very small amount of us that were trying to get this ball rolling. And then after big payday, more and more people. Then after this full year of the product being released out of the adoption phase, there's so many streamers now that it's hard to keep track. And now there are different aspects of streamers, whether that's Pulse, whether that's Hex, whether that's game theory, whether that's tokenomics, whether that's businesses being built that on the money that has been generated through Hex. So during this ratcheting up over the last year to 2 years where we've been inside, we've developed an ecosystem and an engine inside of this particular sphere that was Ethereum. And what's interesting is because Hex is bonded to USDC, we are actually decorrelated more than most other assets, which also takes us to Bitcoin following the same route of the S&P or something like that. Now, Pulse also can be a perfect storm we have our own ecosystem. We have our own infrastructure pipeline. We have Hex as itself as an a yield gaining machine. And because it's on both different chains, it actually works as two different counterbalances and then Pulse in the center of the little seesaw. And so that alone is extremely, extremely interesting. And then we take a look at what Richard was hinting at, that if the scraper bot goes and scrapes all the USDC, and then he takes some of the USDC that he has out of his war chest and put it as a stable and bridges those bonded pairs, now we have our own stable coin, or who sees what will happen in the future, right? But now with the floor is lava of both the entire global Fed, the entire world is trying to look to digital coins and digital assets, but God knows that's just bank coins and fake lies, right? They have to restart the engine somewhere. We now have that opportunity to be on the cusp of this new age. If you look at games like Civilization, and I use this analogy or something like that you need particular resources to raise yourself as an age, right? So if someone took all the oil and hid that and didn't only give it to a few, you'd never be able to join the Industrial Revolution, right? You'd never have machines, planes, all the rest of that type of stuff. You'd just be sitting in your ecosystem with horses and, bronze swords and stuff. So Richard's game theory and really the theory of how all of these ecosystems are playing together is really fascinating if you really take a look and step back. And, that's what's interesting about hexagons is that we actually take a look more than just the price. We look under the hood. And they always, Whale says, look at the plumbing. Always look at the plumbing to see what's going on. And when you take a step back and look at the plumbing, you're going to see all the ley lines of where the problems are. And that's kind of what we're attacking now. And looking into the plumbing of the Fed, it's dangerous, man. Like the inflation rate is what 1% a month right now going up? Like that's just about that's nuts.
Yeah, it is. It's dangerous. And it's like, it's really weird to me, like, just how much people put trust into like a guy who sounds good in a suit. Like, just imagine if we were talking the same shit right now, but we were wearing suits and we had nice lights behind us and the full set, right? Would this be more impactful? Would what you just said be more impactful? Would what I just said be more impactful? Sure. I say yes.
I mean, technically,
as sad as it is.
I mean, no, it is. And I mean, that's why, like, originally I was building some backgrounds for, I built the Caps stateroom. That took me like 300 or 400 hours to do. And ideally, we can make this presence more. That's where the conferences come in. That's where all the stuff starts to roll forward right now. Now we've already taken the time to kind of batten our own hatches and get ourselves established, that the next wave as we go forward and build businesses, build exposure, is actually getting out in the real world. And, talking heads over the internet is just the start. And I think you're right. Better suits, better green screens, all the rest of that. Some people would take you seriously, but it's also the pairing of other people's network effects, like getting Kiyosaki and his brother and all of that interested in talking about those talking points, garner more talking points. Those other people garner more people. The sports people that are coming online. I think the fire that's going to be built in the professional athlete industry to be like, yo, the money that you have nested here, that way when you break your body in a year, you're good, you're minted. And that's the whole thing about the scarcity aspect, is most people don't want to learn it. Kind of drives me mentally mad that because I owe $250,000 in student loan debt. Student loans are the biggest Ponzi in the world. And you don't realize it till you get to the end and you look backwards and be like, how much am I paying for the rest of my life to make how much more at a ceiling? Like, I've seen people that didn't go to school that make almost as much as me. And it's just like, this is nuts. Why did I spend 6 years, so much debt, and then worry about how to get out of that rat hole, right? That's how and why I went so gung-ho in crypto, is once I really understood it, I'm like, this is the way out of the American Ponzi, the glass ceiling. And I talk to people like, I'm going to pay off my credit cards before doing any kind of investment. I'm like, yes, but at least listen to the free videos if you're not going to do the investing, because that's free. And then you'll learn, so you'll understand that, oh, why am I paying off this fiat when this asset is running up in price so much more and would garner so much more wealth than not? You know, $1,000 invested a year and a half ago will basically make you more in yield than you will ever earn in your entire life, period. And that's
and I think I was just going to say, is just to take it back to the sports players, is I find it very interesting that guys who understand their sort of cycle and their timeline within the sport, it's very clear to them now. Like, head injuries are, all but guaranteed. Their life cycle isn't what they thought it once was. And so for a market and industry that knows very well its life cycle, to be picking Hex over Bitcoin, that speaks to the game theory as well. It speaks to the game theory, and it speaks to the design of the product itself, because they can't, you can assume, and I bet if we were to get all these guys on interviews, you can assume they all came in through Bitcoin. They heard about it, everyone's getting paid out in it, all this talk about it, blah, 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 right? So they had heard about it, and then they found Hex, and then they decided to do that. So that tells you a lot. That is a big indicator right there.
Sure. And if you just take that theory that you just had right there, everyone has to start somewhere, right? I didn't learn macroeconomics traditionally at all till, I was learning it in your Discord 3 years ago. And then, with Whale coming on, really drilling in those fundamental foundations. It's not about reading something in a book. It's just using common sense and looking at multiple different cogs that make common sense work. And that's how you get a wheel. And those things roll down the hill. It's super, super simple. And these professional athletes, they probably started in high school. They thought, well, I want to go be a professional. I'm pretty good as a kid. Well, they didn't really think about, kind of like my student loans, what you sold your soul to till you got past that line and you're looking back and you're like, ooh, one injury. Now my head's a little fuzzy. Now I can't, use my arm, and it only takes one more and I'm cut. Right? Maybe I've gone to the second tier. I'm no longer first tier in my skill grade, but I'm still making money. But they can see the half-life. That it only takes one, right? It's just like it takes one car accident to completely wreck you. The same thing happens with any type of sport. And if you put that life insurance or that future stability out there while you have the staunch of liquid, you win. And if you really think about it, Hex is... The interesting game theory about Hex is you can make it as complex as you want or as simple as you want. And that's it's the beauty of how deep do you want to dig? Because the real gem of Hex isn't the immutable code. That's the foundation. The real gem is the community, because the community builds with the same ideals of this product, of this idea that we want to give back and be wealthy at the same time, that we want to break free of this oppression that we're under, and we want to bring those with us as well. And so when you look about those ideals and the foundation that it makes for an ecosystem that's going to go further and further and further, because it's not about the me's, it's about the we's.
Yeah, and it's unique because it's not built off the sweat or suffering of somebody else. And that's what everyone's used to. And I think that's what really fucks up people's brains, is that people that are used to the system operating that way are looking for it. So they're like, where's the loss? Where's the loss? So who's losing in this? And they can't see it. So they think, scam.
Right.
Because literally it's breaking their brain. It's breaking their brain to think that way.
It's because they associate the past of what's happened to them and the hurt that they've had before, not with the future. And unfortunately, it's wise to know that grabbing a hot frying pan is hot. However, it doesn't mean you're scared of every frying pan that you see on the stove, right? Yeah. You have to actually look and see, like, what's going on here? What is the mechanics? And what's interesting, the most interesting part about Hex is not just that it's immutable, it's uncorruptible. The people who own the asset are the corruptible people, not the asset itself. So there's no trickery behind the horse, or there's no, you can see that there's no rub in the whole system. And people are saying, oh, well, what about Richard this and Richard that? Like, well, what if he doesn't? That was the whole beauty of the magic carpet ride ideal, is people don't have a way to phrase, why would someone that already has wealth, yield, and all the rest of that, he wants legacy. He wants to actually help people versus hurt people, which he wrote about in a book long before he did the crypto shit. So think about the lifestyle of the people. And that's, what's really interesting about the future of this next year, of like the idea of Hexagon inside instead of Intel inside, that the Hex people that are now going to be even wealthier are building new businesses, whether it's, Mad Energy, or whether that's different ways to change laws and regulations, whether that's investment stuff. There's a lot of Hexagon inside products for this next year that's going to make 2022 ridiculously wild, especially with what's happening with Pulse and that whole ecosystem moving forward.
But I think the compounding effect is so, like, okay, even if everything stopped right here, Hex is gone tomorrow, and Pulse never happens. What has just occurred off of the wealth that's been created now, which I would argue that the wealth that's been created in the Hex alone is greater than, it's up there with Bitcoin and ETH. But there's definitely no other altcoins that have produced this sort of return for such a large amount of participants. But even if everything ended, the compounding effect that has already occurred of everything that's already happening and in motion is unstoppable. And that 5-10x that is now about to become real and manifest into this next 12 months is going to then create the next compounding effect, and then the next one and the next one. So it's like, and there's so many of these happening. So there's like this little piece within the people in Hex, but then there's, like we were talking about with the athletes and the sports players, is that's going to compound. That could create its own little microcosm of viral effect, meaning that all it's going to take is each one of those guys to now go and tell one other guy. Like, this is how it works, right? Just like it takes one guy to spread a virus to the next guy. Well, the same thing happens with positive stuff like making money. So if they're happy, they're going to talk about it. And they're obviously happy because they're flexing it on their Twitter accounts. So that tells you right there that they're happy and willing to talk about it. So now they're going to talk to their other teammates about it because they're like, dude, I'm in this. You got to get in this.
Right.
It's the same
thing. And what's
thing.
crazy, it's such a small world when you really take a step back. So in the game dev industry, it's incredibly small. It's like 2 degrees of bacon. And like, I have literally a shit ton of CEOs of many game studios in my cell phone. And we know all the same people because we work with the same situational stuff. So when someone starts a new studio, it's like, oh, where have you at? Did you work with this guy? And all the greats and the good people all know each other because we suffered together. It's like going to war. You have a camaraderie. And there's a motivational speaker, Eric Thomas, really, really great speech, but it's when you want to succeed as much as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. But what he is he's a motivational speaker that goes to talk to college level athletes to be like, get your fucking shit together. Do what you're going to do. What happens when we start having people in Hex go to do motivational speaking at college stadiums, all the rest of it, just like the 5555 road tour. It's just a different spin on the exact same thing. And technically people could already be doing it. If there's a Hexagon at in college football or college sports or all the rest of it, reach out, get on a stream. We'll teach you. And that's the difference. None of us here do this to make money. We are already independently wealthy. We want other people to come along. And some would say, like, we want to pump our own bags, but our bags are already packed. It's done. It's game over. We want other people to not suffer. And through that, everybody grows together.
Yeah. I think that would actually be pretty incredible to get an in. I'm saying this publicly for anybody who's listening that wants to step up and do this. If I was stateside, I probably would step up myself, but get aligned with the NFL players and try and line up a speech to the whole team.
Yep.
Like a motivational speech to the whole team. And in that, you mentioned
pretty well. So, and I know nothing about sports, so I'll come in as the pure oddball, but I understand game theory better than most because that's what I do. But sports is just another version of chess. It's all it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's all and that's the one thing about Hex is really interesting. The board does not care about your feelings or your facts. It's math. You are, as a player, are a pawn, a king, a rook, a knight. However you want to be and apply your mechanics to it, you can do that. And so I would definitely, maybe something we can do is reach out to some of the people that Wales have been talking to, because ideally that's where we start. And we create that divine network effect with people that have real money and real influence, right? Because those are the people that are idealized by all sorts of people. They love to watch sports. And maybe through their lens of celebrity aspect, they can actually reach out to the more the common folk that are going to be putting in a couple $100. Because right now, once Pulse launches, a couple $100 is viable. You're not going to get chopped up by the fees. And that's where it gets good. Yeah,
we were talking earlier about adoption, and there's many roads to adoption. This is one of them. Like for somebody like an Eric Thomas or wants to be like that, you could get yourself in front of NFL teams now to not only talk about Hex as a vehicle for them to help protect wealth, etc. But just to motivate them and pump them up about life and the future, right? So that's a piece. But you were saying something interesting before about music festivals. I don't know if you remember that.
I do. I can't give away that one to but no. The thing is that this type of stuff, that the future is coming, and there are a few Hexicans that are very well known that we're working behind the scenes to try to do those multiple avenues of ideas. But I can share
what's already happening, right?
Correct. I can share the stuff that I was pitching about the Mad Energy stuff for the plastic boat, if you want, or I can do the Flint stuff. If you can think about it, here's the interesting thing about game theory and using system dynamics. Figure out a problem you want to solve, and then start to model out how you would make this work, how you would solve for the situations, and give yourself blockers to be like, all right, well, these are the biggest, basically like a SWOT analysis, right? Where are your weaknesses? And then take a look at how do you reinforce those little holes, right? And so for example, something that Matt's doing is the little plastic boat that actually eats plastic as fuel. So it's a closed loop. And if you take that as a closed loop, you're like, aha, I've got it. Now you can just figure out how to fund that closed loop that produces more and more and more. And eventually you make a wave of these little boats that eat plastic and actually cure the world. And because you did a staking ladder, it only costs an initial investment. But I guess here's the interesting thing that most people don't think about with NFTs, if you want to go down that route. An NFT is not a silly image. It is a social security number that owns a social security number or identity that owns a social security number or identity. And anything along the stack can interact with DAOs, oracles, execute and deliver on smart contracts. It is just an identity, just like you have an address that you live in, and you have people that live there with social security numbers. Those are identities. And so multiple people can live in a house or a wallet that can execute and do different jobs and deliveries. So the more that we bend interoperability into the future, remember, think about ETH is only 6 years old, something like that.
Yeah.
So we only had really a second dominant programmable chain for 6 years. Bitcoin's 12? So twice been a lifespan. So that's one cycle. second cycle, and now we're sitting at that third cycle where everything is just going to get crazy and juicy, because now we have interoperability, we have the fungible assets that we no longer rely on the SWIFT network to send money overseas, to interact with people, to send deliverances home for people working overseas. There's so much more that's going to be built, and the real future is going to be augmented reality and virtual reality. That is everything for the next level of everything. Yeah,
it is. And that, like, thinking about just how much you could stack all of that and integrate and I guess communicate within those vehicles of what you just outlined, just literally racks my fucking brain thinking about it. But like, even though, so the first iteration and what everyone's getting, I feel like getting lost in, is just that they're thinking that NFT is an image and it just represents this like piece of art. And now that the art community's kind of latched onto it, like everyone's just kind of like there. They're not really thinking about these other levels and other ways of interaction. And I think that's where the future lies and the true value of that entire idea actually is. And the metaverse ties in with this beautifully, right? Like, whether, like, I don't like it just because I think it's dumb. I'd rather just go live in the real world and talk to people and shake hands and have conversations that way and build my life, like the real life. But I completely understand people's desire to go and build a fake reality. People who are extremely unhappy in their life or feeling unfulfilled and don't have tools, don't have a community around them or people around them to be able to help. They will go to this alternate reality and build that out as if that's their identity, their real life, their real value. They will go and do that. You can't stop that, right? And so there's no point trying to.
Well, you also have multiple different threads of that. So let's take a step back to the molehill from rocket ships. If you did not have a petrock.com bubble, .coms would not be worth anything today. It had to go through that full cycle and circuit to be like, anyone could have a .com and sell it for $1 million. Yeah, well, that came and went, and that cycle is everybody needs .com after that time. But that bubble, it basically retraced, and now .coms and .ios and .infos and everything. The internet holds all weight. The .com bubble was everyone be like, what's an internets? And so I know we had like that concrete interoperability that made it all work together. And if you think about, like, with everyone doing remote work, all the rest of that type of stuff, wouldn't it be easier if you could actually be sitting at a desk with all your coworkers working remote and actually stand up and go to a whiteboard and actually whiteboard some shit out like you would in an actual office? Well, that's virtual reality. That's augmented reality. Now, it is cheesy right now what it's doing, but AOL was cheesy back in the day. And that was before the .com fucking bubble, right? Yeah. And so look how far we've come in 20 years.
I mean, remember AOL chat? AOL chat, dude.
Skype, MIRC. I did all of it. But look how far we've come. Remember, bulletin board games were just text-based back in, 95? So, like, we've come a long way in both the scalability and the representation of the world that we live in. And when people talk about this whole hubbub about, oh, the market cap this, and oh, that's bigger than the global GDP, it's like you realize we're moving into internet money, with the internet being the primary tool of accessibility. So 10 years ago, I was working in LA, and I was working on this project called Marquee. And essentially, let's just say that you were living in New York, but No Doubt or some rock band, that whatever one you want to insert there, was playing at the Roxy. And you wanted to go listen to the show in real time. You could actually go buy a ticket, and then I modeled out a way, it was 10 years ago in Unreal Tech, that I would green screen the show. You'd actually model out the real Roxy that you were there. You could walk over to the merch booth, buy merch from there, and it would automatically have it mailed to your house, like you were actually at the show, but you didn't have to leave your house because maybe you couldn't.
That's crazy.
Now let's take that into people that are not from privileged economies. What if you are in an impoverished part of the world and you still want to take part and access these kinds of things? A, you can't get past the boundaries of the border. B, you don't have the financial liquidity to fly and burn money on a vacation, but you still can take part in the experience. That's where the metaverse is going to really interconnect everyone as an interoperable entertainment and learning solution. What if you could take, let's just say an MIT or a Harvard or a fucking Stanford Ivy League professor that just wants to open up a forum for his fucking free time. You'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about this. Anyone from around the world can log in and hear my speech. Or what they had this, I forget what the app is that you're only invited to speak and everyone can join your channel, but they can't speak. I forget what it was. But like,
I know what you mean, but I can't remember either.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But those things are already starting to spring on up. And so when you think about the vast wealth of knowledge as the most expensive token in the world, the more people that you give interoperability to learn, discuss, and build, that's truly where the wealth will be generated.
Yeah, it will. And that to me is Web3. That to me is Web3.
Yep.
Everything we just talked about to me is Web3. Right. Like the real one.
We're building on the bones of giants right now. We are at the stage where if you can earn more in a year by investing in some silly little coin and learn more about macroeconomics than you've learned in the last 40 years of being alive, you did pretty fucking good.
Yeah,
you did pretty good. You did pretty fucking good. Yeah. And the only thing that it took was risk to actually do the thing and actually spend the time. I believe that sweat equity is the most valuable equity in the world, but a lot of people don't see it that way. They would rather pay someone to do a thing and not learn, which I think is ludicrous. Once you can get in front of people and to teach them how to learn correctly, you start an army of awakened, intelligent people that are hungry for more, right? Why would you not?
Yeah, what you just covered, like there's so much we can unpack there. I don't want to go down those rabbit holes. But like just to be able to bring people from countries that don't have physical access to online access, like you saw, like YouTube and videos and stuff like what we're doing right here was the first iteration of that. But the next iteration is the much more hands-on approach, which is going to be, VR, augmented reality, whatever you want to call it. It's just going to be that piece to where it's like, I feel like I look around and I'm in the room with you, which I think will make the teaching more impactful and the learning more impactful, because you and I both know that full immersion is one of the most valuable pieces of the teaching itself, is to be there in the room with them, listening to the conversation. So that's going to be absolutely incredible from a, what's the next big jump in intelligence, global intelligence, and then what this leads to from a global community building aspect. Mm-hmm. And now you imagine now Hex and these different vehicles are going to be at the forefront, I assume, of that, because the community will be so large that the community will go and do it. Hex doesn't need to do anything. Hex is just the protocol, but it will be dragged into this new reality because of all of us that are involved. And, we're going to take that community into this now new place with all these other communities. It's just going to be like the next big growth piece and adoption piece, which is going to be absolutely incredible to see.
That's exactly right. That's why like people are get all crazy maxi on some stuff. Like, look, Hex will make you the most money. That's what it does. It's an investment machine. It makes money. If you like money, that's what it does. Don't try to bend it to anything else. There will be other tools in a tool belt. Like I have a wine key right here. I don't use this to change a tire in a car. I don't use this to open up my computer. I don't use this to open up the locks on my door. It is a tool. You use the right tool for the right job that you want to do. And if you look at the future, Hex is going to be the hedge of all finance. But then we have Pulse, which gives us an interstate, a highway to actually drive on, to use, to actually have interoperability. And then the next iterations of this cycle are businesses and ideals that are Hexagon built. And then I think teaching and taking care of the younger generation is the most valuable thing in the world. It was the one thing that I feel has been lost to a lot of people, that they don't have the either opportunity because they're in impoverished nations, or the game is rigged. Like I didn't ask for student loan debt Ponzi, but I wanted to go to college after being a truck driver. I didn't really understand the implications till I got out of the whole system and circuit. And now looking back, I'm like, how would I solve that for me in the past? And that's what I look to hopefully build in the future, are those type of avenues where people can learn for free. They can grow and be more of a hive-minded community. Because when you enable people to help others, ideally they help other people around there. You know, each one teaches.
Yeah, I agree. And I think education is really the missing piece for a lot of the issues that you see around the world right now. And so once we can continue, as we can continue to bridge that gap and bring in more communities that don't have physical access, or more people that don't know what they need, I think that is going to improve everyone's quality of life, right? And that's what this is now allowing us to do, which I think is very, very special.
Well, what's interesting about the quality of life aspect is that we are on the precipice of an age changing, like a Gilded Age, a Bronze Age, a Renaissance, a Neo-Deco, however you want to like look at the age, because we're forced to, from both the Fed and the financial system that are in play, whether it's the next big short coming or the next Great Depression coming, is coming, and you can see it. And then we have hedges on the other side, whether it's just any crypto, but then you have better avenues outside of just any crypto. So you have to look at like your nuggets of gold and where it all comes from, and then the growth of that half-life. And so when the pain comes soon, and it's I don't see how it's inevitable. It may not be the Fed becomes Zimbabwe dollars. I don't think that'll happen, but I think the purchasing power and availability for the poor caste and class of people will forever have another giant slat of glass ceiling inserted above them. And that's what people don't realize. They can see up and see through the window, but they don't realize that there's 16 different slabs of glass ceiling that they keep shoving over and over and over the impoverished. And you look up and you don't think that that it's a big sky, but really they're pressing down further and further and further and compressing the normies to never be able to break out. Because even if you shatter the first two, you got another 7 or 8 slabs of glass above you, and you can't see it because it's all transparent. Yeah,
I agree. And you don't realize, just like you think it looks like it's at the same place, or maybe even going up, but it's actually going down.
Correct.
So they're putting those slabs in lower and lower.
Yep, exactly.
Not higher and higher.
And that's the craziest thing. It's like, until you kind of like model this stuff out, you don't really see it. But once you, so I was at the game studio I work for, which no one knows the name of. It's, I try to hide that shit for OPSEC, but they had a holiday party for Halloween, and it was the first time I've been at a carnival since I became a dev. And I looked at the little mallet smasher thing where you ring the bell, and it's a seesaw, but there is a concrete slab that's further than the middle of the seesaw. It's further up. And they do that to put the fulcrum at the very, 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 very tip to ring the bell. And I was looking at this thing and I'm like, I immediately knew how it worked, because they put the pad that you have to hit further up the chain, right? So like the tip of the metal is exposed. The fulcrum is further towards it where it doesn't hit, and they entice you to hit the pad over here. That's why you have the one-offs of the random person that whiffs and barely touches it, dings the bell. Or where you have the big strong guy that hits the pad with all of its might, it doesn't matter. So I'm like, fuck it, I bet you this works. And I went, bing, like the entire night I'm just ringing the damn bell. And and I'm like, y'all are game devs. Look at the fucking fulcrum. Like they entice you to drink their little Kool-Aid. And if you just look at the plumbing, you can understand how it works. Yeah, game development, game dynamics. Yeah, that's funny, hey? Well, I think that's a good place. Like, look at it, right? It's so simple.
It is. I was just going to say, I think that's a good place to end it on this video. I didn't want it to be too long, so we're 40 minutes in, so I think that's good for us. Thank you so much for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, anytime. We have a huge future to build, and it's exciting to have friends like you and everyone else here that to help build it.
All right, and for you guys, like the video, comment below, just even for the algorithms, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, see you.